The gunshot cracked through the Montana darkness like the breaking of ancient ice. 3:47 in the morning. October frost clinging to the pines, each needle crystallized in silver moonlight that turned the forest into something from a frozen dream. A man fell backward into the brush, his arms windmilling uselessly, his mouth open in a scream that never came. His blood looked black against the silver landscape spreading in patterns that resembled nothing so much as wings. Catherine Brennan stood with the Kentucky rifle still smoking in her hands, her breath coming in short bursts that crystallized in the frigid air. Each exhalation was a small ghost born and dying in the space between heartbeats. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold, not from fear, from something deeper, something that had been sleeping for 20 years in the darkest corners of her soul and had just opened its eyes. From recognition, from the terrible understanding that some things once learned could never be unlearned. Some skills once mastered became part of your bones. The body lay still. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled its voice, rising and falling like a question that would never be answered. The sound echoed off the mountains, multiplying until it seemed the whole world was crying out in languages older than words. Kate lowered the rifle slowly, her eyes never leaving the dead man's face. The moon painted him in shades of gray and darker gray, robbing him of color but not of humanity. She did not recognize him. His features were ordinary, the kind of face you would pass on a street without a second glance. But then she had stopped keeping track of faces a long time ago. Some ghosts you could count, cataloging them like entries in a ledger. Others became a tide washing over you until you drowned in the remembering, until the faces blurred together into one long scream. She turned and walked back toward town, the rifle heavy against her shoulder, heavier than it should be despite its familiar weight. Her boots crunched on ground that would be mud by midday, but was hard as bone in the pre-dawn cold. Behind her, the body would be discovered in 6 hours. Questions would be asked. Answers would be demanded. The machinery of consequence would grind into motion unstoppable as winter. But that was 6 hours away. Right now, in this moment between night and morning, in this liminal space where the world held its breath, Kate Brennan walked alone through the forest. And for the first time in 2 decades, she allowed herself to remember who she had been before she became who she was. She let the memories rise like water through cracks in a dam, flooding chambers of her mind she had kept locked and dark. The name Deadeye Volkov whispered through her consciousness like smoke through a keyhole, curling and twisting, taking shape in the darkness. Elena. That had been her real name, Elena Volkov, the daughter of Dmitry Volkov, the Russian immigrant who had become the most feared sharpshooter in 3 territories. He had taught her everything. How to breathe, how to wait, how to see the world not as it was, but as it would be in the second after you pulled the trigger. He had taught her that killing was mathematics, distance plus wind plus the beating of your own heart. Solve the equation perfectly, and death followed as surely as night followed day. She had been 8 years old when she fired her first shot, 17 when she killed her first man, 23 when she had finally walked away, leaving behind a trail of bodies and a reputation that had followed her like a shadow, until she had buried it. Until she had become Catherine Brennan, shopkeeper, widow woman of no particular importance in a town of no particular significance. But the dead did not stay buried in Blackwater Creek. Not tonight. 6 hours earlier, when the world was still innocent. The trading post stood at the eastern edge of Blackwater Creek like a sentinel, a sturdy 2-story structure of dark timber that had weathered 20 Montana winters without complaint. It had been built by Swedish immigrants in the 1860s, constructed with the kind of craftsmanship that belonged to a different age. Every board was true, every joint tight. The building had survived fires, floods, and the slow grinding poverty that had killed most of the other businesses in town. It endured. Lantern light spilled from its windows onto Main Street, casting long shadows that stretched and bent with the evening wind. The shadows moved like living things, dancing to music only they could hear. Inside the pot-bellied stove radiated heat that barely reached the corners of the room where darkness pooled thick and patient, waiting for the lamps to fail. Kate stood behind the counter, her hands moving with mechanical precision as she inventoried supplies: flour, coffee, ammunition, tobacco, sugar, salt, beans, the items of survival, the currency of the frontier. Each had its place on the shelves. Each had its price written in her neat, careful hand. The routine was comforting in its predictability. Every item had a purpose. Every number had a meaning. Order carved from chaos. Structure imposed on the random violence of existence. At 43, Catherine Brennan had the kind of face that made people look twice, but never ask questions. It was a striking face, once beautiful before time, and experience had etched their lessons into her skin. High cheekbones that spoke of Slavic ancestry. A strong jaw. Eyes that were pale blue, the color of ice on deep water, cold enough to make you shiver even in summer. But it was the scar that defined her. A long, jagged line that ran from her left cheekbone down to her collarbone, disappearing beneath the high collar of her dress. It was not a wound you got from falling off a horse or catching yourself on a fence post. It was deliberate, intentional. The kind of scar that spoke of violence, intimate and personal, of a blade drawn slowly across flesh while someone watched. She did not hide it, had never tried to. It was part of who she was now as much as her name or her past. Her chestnut hair, streaked with premature silver that made her look older than her years, was pulled back in a practical braid that hung down her back. She wore a simple blue cotton dress beneath a leather apron, both well-worn but meticulously clean. Her sleeves were rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle, the kind of strength that came not from labor but from discipline. When she moved, it was with an economy of motion that suggested training practice, endless repetition, until efficiency became instinct. When she looked at you, she looked through you, her gaze moving in patterns, hands first checking for weapons, posture next assessing intent, then exits counting routes of escape or advance. Finally, faces cataloging features she might need to remember. It was automatic now, unconscious as breathing. Most people in Blackwater Creek had learned not to meet her gaze for too long. It made them uncomfortable, though they could not say exactly why. Like being examined by something predatory that had learned to wear human skin. The bell above the door chimed bright and cheerful, utterly incongruous with the weight of the evening. Kate's hand moved instinctively toward the Remington revolver hidden beneath the counter, her fingers finding the grip before conscious thought could intervene. Then she recognized the visitor, and her hand relaxed, though it did not move away entirely. Old habits died hard, or rather, they did not die at all. They just went to sleep, waiting to be awakened. Dr. Abigail Chen stepped inside, bringing with her the scent of carbolic acid and autumn air of medicine and mortality. At 35, Abigail had the composed bearing of someone who had seen death often enough to respect it but not fear it. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with an authority that made her seem larger. Her heritage was mixed Chinese father and Irish mother, and she had inherited the best features of both. Dark almond eyes that missed nothing, pale skin that burned easily in the Montana sun, black hair pulled back in a severe bun that somehow made her look both younger and older than her years. "Good evening, Miss Brennan." Abigail set her medical bag on the counter with a soft thud. The bag was worn leather, stained with substances better left unexamined. "I was hoping you might have some laudanum. Mrs. Peterson's arthritis is troubling her again. The cold weather makes it worse." Kate turned to the shelf behind her, her fingers finding the correct bottle without looking. She had organized the medicines by frequency of use, by severity of need. Laudanum was third from the left second shelf. She knew the position of every item in the store the way a pianist knows the keys of their instrument. This should last her through the week. Kate's voice was low, roughened by disuse. She spoke rarely, and when she did, people listened. Not because she was loud, but because her words were chosen with care, each one carrying weight. Abigail accepted the bottle, studying Kate's face with the careful attention of someone trained to read symptoms beneath surfaces. The doctor's eyes moved across Kate's features the way Kate's eyes moved across the world, cataloging, assessing, drawing conclusions from evidence invisible to others. "How are you sleeping?" The question seemed casual, but there was a physician's concern beneath it. Fine. The lie hung between them for a moment, visible as the lamplight, solid as the counter that separated them. Abigail's expression suggested she recognized it for what it was, but had the grace not to press. Not yet. Not here. But the question had been asked. The concern had been noted. The door had been opened, just a crack. "You know?" Abigail said, her tone conversational as she counted coins onto the counter. "I've been in Blackwater Creek for 5 years now. In that time I've learned something interesting about this town." Kate said nothing, her eyes returning to her ledger. The numbers there were honest. They did not lie or dissemble. They simply were. There was comfort in that. Everyone here is running from something. Abigail arranged the coins in a neat stack, her movements precise. "The question isn't whether you have a past. It's whether you're brave enough to face it when it catches up." She paused, letting the words settle. "Because it always catches up, Miss Brennan. Always. The only choice we have is whether we meet it standing or running." The words landed with the weight of prophecy. Kate's pen paused mid-stroke, a small imperfection appearing in the column of numbers, a tiny rebellion against order. When she looked up, Abigail's dark eyes held something that might have been sympathy, or might have been challenge, or might have been something else entirely. Recognition, perhaps. One wounded soul seeing another. "The past doesn't catch up," Kate said quietly. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the quiet of the store it carried. "It's always been here. We just pretend otherwise. We draw curtains over mirrors and tell ourselves we've changed, but the reflection is always there, waiting for us to look." Abigail nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she had long suspected, some theory she had been building, patient as a mason laying stones. She gathered her purchase and turned to leave, her footsteps soft on the worn wooden floor. At the door she paused, her hand on the frame, not quite turning back. "There's a storm coming. Not weather. Something else. I can feel it. The way animals sense earthquakes before they happen, the way birds flee before hurricanes. Something is wrong with the world, Miss Brennan. Something is coming." Then she was gone, the door closing behind her, the bell's chime fading into silence. After she left, Kate stood motionless behind the counter. The trading post settled around her, with creaks and sighs, the language of old wood in cold air, the conversation of nails and boards that had been having the same dialogue for decades. She glanced up at the Kentucky rifle mounted above the door, her father's rifle, her grandfather's before him, a family heirloom that had followed her across 3 states and 20 years silent witness to everything she had been and everything she had tried to forget. The rifle was a flintlock converted to percussion cap in the 1850s, nearly 60 years old now, ancient by the standards of modern firearms. Men with repeating rifles looked at it and laughed, called it a relic, a museum piece. One shot, they said. What good is one shot in a world where men carried guns that could fire 15 times without reloading, but the rifle had never missed? Not in her hands. Not once in 35 years. Not in practice. Not in anger. Not in fear. Never. Some legacies you could not outrun. Kate closed the ledger and moved to lock the front door. The key turned with a solid click, metal sliding into metal, the sound of things being closed, secured, protected. Through the window she could see Main Street settling into evening quiet. The town was small, barely 200 souls, clinging to existence like a barnacle to a rock. Most of the mines had played out years ago. The railroad had gone through 60 miles to the south, taking prosperity with it. What remained was stubbornness, inertia. The human tendency to stay put even when staying made no sense. Sheriff William Cooper walked his rounds, his breath visible in the lamplight little clouds of vapor that marked his passage. He moved with the careful attention of a man who had learned not to take safety for granted. His hand rested on his holster, not gripping, but ready. Always ready. Marcus Sullivan was closing the saloon, shooing out the last stragglers, men who had nowhere better to be and no reason to hurry there. Their voices carried in the cold air slurred and boisterous false courage, bought at 50 cents a glass. Lily Harrington stood on the porch of her hotel, arms crossed against the cold, watching her grandson Tommy play with a wooden horse in the dirt. Tommy, 8 years old, dark hair that fell into his eyes, quick smile that lit up his whole face, a laugh that reminded Kate of another child, another life, Another world that had ended in rain and blood and choices that could not be unmade. She turned away from the window before the memory could take hold, before it could pull her down into depths she had spent 20 years learning to avoid. But the image stayed with her as she climbed the stairs to her living quarters. Tommy's face kept shifting, blurring, becoming another face. Smaller, younger. A face she had not seen in 20 years but remembered with the perfect clarity of trauma. Jesse, her son, 3 years old the last time she had held him. Upstairs in her living quarters, Kate lit a single lamp and sat in the chair by the window. The room was sparse, almost monastic in its simplicity. A bed, a dresser, a rocking chair, a small table. Nothing on the walls, no decorations, no photographs, nothing that might anchor her to this place, nothing that would be difficult to leave behind when the time came, because the time would come. It always did. On the dresser sat a daguerreotype in a tarnished silver frame, face down. She never looked at it, but she never put it away either. That would be admission, acceptance. She kept it there face down, a talisman against forgetting. Every morning when she woke, she saw it. Every night before she slept. The temptation to turn it over was constant, a physical ache. But she never did. Some pain was necessary. Some wounds needed to stay open. Some ghosts you kept close. Emily, her daughter. 5 years old when the fever took her. Or so Elena had believed for 15 years. The coffin had been closed. Elena had never looked inside. Couldn't bear to. And now that small wooden box was buried in a churchyard 3 states away, the name Emily Volkoff, carved into a headstone that might mark nothing but empty earth. She never spoke of Emily. Not to Thomas, who had loved the girl as his own. Not to anyone in Blackwater Creek. Some losses were too deep for words. At the foot of the bed was a wooden chest, locked and undisturbed. She had not opened it in 8 years. Inside were the remnants of Elena Volkoff, the gun belt with twin Remington revolvers, the wanted posters, the letters she had never sent, the baby shoes she had kept, all the evidence of a life lived and abandoned. The night deepened around her. Stars emerged in the clear sky, hard and bright, and indifferent to human suffering. Kate sat without moving, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes unfocused on the darkness beyond the window. This was her meditation, this stillness, this emptiness. If she sat quiet enough, long enough, the voices in her head would eventually fall silent. The memories would retreat. The ghosts would return to their graves. Tonight they did not. Tonight they crowded close, whispering, demanding, remembering. Tonight they whispered a name she had not heard spoken aloud in 2 decades. Deadeye. The scream cut through the night at 10:15 like a blade through silk. Kate was on her feet before conscious thought, before her conscious mind even registered the sound. Her hand was already gripping the rifle she kept beside her bed, a twin to the one mounted downstairs. Training from another life took over smooth and automatic. Body first, mind later. She moved to the window, her steps silent, despite her haste scanning the street below, with eyes that had learned to read darkness the way scholars read books. Shadows and lamplight. The interplay of illumination and void. No movement except the wind moving through the trees, making the shadows dance and shift. Nothing out of place, nothing obviously wrong. The scream came again, higher-pitched, desperate. A child's scream, not pain, terror. The kind of fear that bypassed reason and went straight to the animal brain, the ancient part that remembered when humans were prey. Tommy. Kate was down the stairs in seconds, her boots hitting each step with practiced silence. She had mapped every creak in those stairs, knew where to step to minimize sound. She grabbed the Kentucky rifle from above the door, her hands moving through the loading sequence without conscious thought. Powder from the horn. Ball from the pouch, ramrod to seated. Percussion cap, 30 seconds from empty to ready. She slipped out the back entrance into the alley behind the trading post. The night air bit at her exposed skin, sharp enough to hurt, cold enough to clarify thought. She moved along the side of the building, keeping to the shadows, every sense heightened to a level most people never experienced. The world became data, sound, movement, scent, temperature, all of it feeding into calculations happening too fast for words. The screams were coming from the old barn at the edge of town where the livery had once stood, before burning down 3 years ago. Lightning strike, they had said, though some whispered arson. Now it was just a skeleton of blackened timber and bad memories, a place children dared each other to approach after dark. Kate approached low and fast, using the terrain for cover. The moon was bright enough to cast shadows, which meant bright enough to be seen. She moved from tree to tree, pausing between movements, listening, watching, waiting for any sign she had been detected. As she drew closer, she could hear voices. Male, rough. The accent was wrong for Montana. Texas, maybe, or further south, New Mexico, Arizona. Through a gap in the barn's wall, she could see them. 3 men, 2 holding lanterns that created islands of light in the darkness. The third gripping Tommy Harrington by the arm, the boy's face streaked with tears and dirt. Tommy was trying to be brave, trying not to cry the way his grandmother had taught him, but his whole body shook. His teeth chattered. Not from cold, from fear so pure it was almost beautiful in its intensity. Just insurance, one of the men was saying. His voice was casual, as if discussing the weather or the price of cattle. Town won't give us trouble if we have the kid. Wallace was clear. No witnesses, no complications. Kid's leverage. Wallace said no killing unless necessary, another replied. This one sounded younger, uncertain. There was doubt in his voice. Conscience, perhaps, not yet fully deadened. Kid ain't dead, just scared. That ain't the same thing. The third man laughed, a sound like gravel in a can. Besides, Wallace ain't here. What he don't know won't hurt him. Kate's jaw tightened. Her finger moved to the rifle's trigger, settling into the familiar groove worn by decades of use. She calculated distances with the part of her brain that had been trained to think in trajectories and windage, sight lines, angles, the geometry of death. The first man was 180 yards away, partially obscured by the barn's interior shadows. A difficult shot, not impossible. Nothing was impossible if you understood the mathematics. Wind was calm, temperature cold, which would affect the powder's burn rate slightly. The target was stationary. All variables within acceptable ranges. Kate breathed out slowly, settling into the familiar rhythm her father had taught her. In through the nose, filling the lungs completely. Hold for 3 seconds while the body stills. Out through the mouth, slow and controlled, squeezing the trigger at the very end of the exhale, in that moment of absolute stillness between breaths, when the body was most stable. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, patient and certain, speaking in the Russian accented English he had never fully mastered. A Volkov never misses Elena. Her father had trained her until the rifle became an extension of her will, until missing was impossible. It is not arrogance. It is mathematics. Understand the equation, and death follows with certainty. She had not been Elena Volkov for 20 years, but the rifle remembered, and her body remembered, and the part of her brain that had been shaped by 10,000 repetitions remembered. The first shot took the man holding the lantern through the throat just above the collarbone, severing the carotid artery and the windpipe in a single instant. He dropped without sound, his hands releasing the lantern in a gesture that looked almost gentle. The lantern fell and extinguished in the dirt, plunging half the barn into darkness. The man followed it down his life, leaving him in spurts that looked black in the moonlight. The other 2 spun confused, searching for the source of the gunfire. Their eyes scanned the darkness, but found nothing. Kate was already reloading, the motion so automatic it required no thought. Powder, ball, ram. Chapter 5 seconds from empty to ready. Her hands moved with the precision of a machine, the economy of 1,000 repetitions. The second man raised his pistol, firing blindly into the darkness. His shots went wide, panic-destroying aim. Fear made men stupid, made them fast when they should be slow, loud when they should be quiet. He fired 4 times, 5, 6, the muzzle flash, destroying his night vision, turning him temporarily blind. Kate's second shot caught him in the chest, 2 inches left of center, the ball passing through his heart and out his back. He staggered backwards, surprise written across his features in the instant before death claimed him. His pistol clattered to the ground, and he collapsed against the barn wall, sliding down to sit in a posture that looked almost comfortable, almost peaceful. The third man released Tommy and drew his weapon, but Kate was already moving. She emerged from cover, the rifle at her hip, and covered the remaining distance in 5 long strides. The man's gun was coming up his finger, tightening on the trigger, his mouth opening to shout a warning that would never be heard. Kate fired point blank, the muzzle less than 3 feet from his chest. The impact lifted him off his feet and threw him backward. He hit the ground and did not move again. Silence crashed over the barn like a wave, sudden and absolute. The ringing in Kate's ears from the gunshots faded slowly, replaced by the small sounds of the night. Wind, distant water, the creak of old wood settling. Tommy stood frozen, his eyes enormous in his pale face, his mouth open in a scream he was too terrified to release. Kate lowered the rifle, her breathing steady, her hands rock still, no tremor, no hesitation. The violence had been surgical, efficient, without mercy or malice. Just necessity, just mathematics solved with lead and powder. She walked to the boy and knelt before him, setting the rifle aside. Her movements were slow, deliberate, non-threatening. "Tommy," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle, softer than anyone in Blackwater Creek had ever heard it. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head, unable to speak. His breath came in short gasps. Shock Kate recognized. The body's response to trauma. He needed warmth, safety, familiarity. Kate glanced at the 3 bodies, then back to the child. Her face showed nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction. Just the calm of someone who had done what needed doing and would do it again without hesitation if required. "You need to go home. Don't look at them. Look at me." Tommy's eyes locked onto hers, desperate for an anchor in a world that had suddenly become incomprehensible. "Walk. Don't run. If anyone asks, you got lost playing and I found you wandering. Do you understand?" He nodded, the motion jerky, mechanical. "Good boy. Go straight home. Tell your grandmother you're safe. Go." Tommy walked past the bodies without looking, his small form disappearing into the darkness. Kate listened until his footsteps faded, until she was certain he was far enough away, then turned her attention to the dead men. She searched them quickly, professionally, her hands moving through their pockets with the efficiency of long practice. No identification, no papers. But their clothes told a story. Good boots, well maintained, quality gun belts. These were not drifters or opportunists. They were professionals, which meant they were here for a reason. In the first man's pocket she found a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it by the light of the remaining lantern, her hand steady, despite what she knew she would find. It was a wanted poster, 20 years old, yellowed with age and creased from being folded and unfolded many times. The illustration was crude but recognizable. A young woman with hard eyes and a rifle, her face rendered in stark black and white. Below the image, printed in bold letters that had faded but remained legible. Elena Volkov, also known as Deadeye, wanted for murder and robbery. Reward $500, dead or alive. Kate stared at her own face, rendered in fading ink. She had been 23 when that poster was printed. A lifetime ago. A different person. The woman in that picture had been hard certain alive with the kind of intensity that came from living every moment on the edge of death. The woman holding the poster was older, quieter, hollowed out by loss and time. But they were the same person. That was the truth she could no longer avoid. She folded the poster and slipped it into her coat. Behind her, a floorboard creaked, the sound loud in the silence. Kate spun, rifle rising in a single fluid motion, finger on the trigger, breath held, every muscle tensed. Reverend Samuel Holt stood in the barn doorway, his hands raised in a gesture of peace, his face pale in the moonlight. He was a lean man, all sharp angles and nervous energy, the kind of person who looked like he would break in a strong wind, but his eyes were steady, and he did not flinch from the rifle pointed at his chest. "Easy, Miss Brennan. I'm not armed." His voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone accustomed to talking people back from edges. Kate did not lower the rifle. "What are you doing here? I saw the boy running, heard the shots." He gestured toward the bodies, his movements slow and careful. "This is going to require some explanation." "No," Kate said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. It requires a shovel and silence. Holt studied her for a long moment, his eyes moving across her face, reading the landscape of violence written there. When he spoke, his voice was measured, thoughtful. "I've been in Blackwater Creek for 2 years. In that time I've watched you, Miss Brennan, tried to understand you, and now I think I do. You don't know anything about me, don't I?" Holt took a careful step into the barn, his movements telegraphed, non-threatening. "I know those shots were taken in near darkness at extreme range. I know you reloaded and fired 3 times in less than 15 seconds. I know you killed 3 armed men without hesitation or error." He paused, letting the words settle. Words, those are not the skills of a shopkeeper. Kate's finger tightened on the trigger. The pressure increased, approaching the break point. "What do you want? The truth. Who are you? Really?" For a long moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the broken barn, whistling through gaps in the burned wood. The two of them stood frozen, a tableau of confrontation that could go either way. Then Kate lowered the rifle. "Someone I used to be. They buried the bodies before dawn." Holt proved stronger than his lean frame suggested, and he worked without complaint. His hands had calluses in the right places, the marks of someone who had done hard labor. Not recent, but not forgotten either. They chose a spot in the forest beyond the creek where the ground was soft enough to dig, but remote enough that no one would stumble across the graves by accident. The work was hard, cold, the kind of labor that left you aching and grateful for the distraction of physical pain. As they filled in the last grave, Holt leaned on his shovel, his breath coming in clouds. "These men were looking for you." Kate did not answer. She continued shoveling, the rhythm steady, mechanical. That wanted poster, 20 years old, but someone still remembers. Someone knows where you are. Everyone forgets eventually. Kate's voice was quiet, almost lost in the sound of dirt hitting dirt. Not everyone. Holt wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "I told you I've been watching you. I haven't been idle. I made inquiries, wrote letters to contacts back east, called in favors from my former life. And I learned some interesting things about a woman named Elena Volkov." Kate's hand stilled on her shovel. The night seemed to hold its breath. "They called you Deadeye, said you were the best shot in 3 territories, said you never missed, not once in 10 years of riding with the Jameson Raiders, said you robbed banks and stagecoaches from Kansas to California." Holt's voice was soft, almost reverent. "Said you turned on your own gang leader, shot him dead to save a group of hostages. After that you disappeared. Everyone assumed you were dead. Most wanted you to be dead. Easier that way. That woman is dead. Is she? Because I just watched her kill 3 men without blinking, without hesitation, without mercy." Kate drove her shovel into the earth with more force than necessary. The blade bit deep, cutting through roots. "What do you want from me?" "Reverent confession. Absolution. I'm fresh out of both." "Neither. Just honesty." Holt met her gaze across the fresh grave. "Because in 3 hours, this town is going to wake up. Tommy is going to tell his grandmother what happened. And questions are going to be asked. Hard questions. Dangerous questions. You need to decide right now who you're going to be when that happens. You need to choose." The eastern sky was beginning to lighten, a faint gray line against the black, the first hint of dawn creeping across the world like an invasion. With it would come exposure, consequence, the end of hiding. Kate looked down at the fresh graves, 3 mounds of disturbed earth that marked the ending of 3 lives. She felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, just the familiar emptiness that had followed her for 20 years, the void where emotions should be. "I'm Catherine Brennan," she said finally. "I run the trading post. I've lived here 8 years. That's all anyone needs to know." Holt shook his head slowly, sadly. "That was true yesterday. Today it's a lie everyone will see through." He placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle. "Elena, the truth has found you. The only question now is whether you'll face it standing or running." Kate looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. There was something in his eyes, recognition, understanding, the look of one broken thing seeing another. "You know what it's like," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Holt's voice was barely audible. I know exactly what it's like to run from who you were, to try to become someone else, to wake up every morning and put on a mask and hope today isn't the day it slips. Who were you? Holt smiled, but there was no humor in it. Someone who made mistakes, someone who hurt people, someone who found God only after exhausting every other option. He looked at the graves. We all have bodies buried, Elena. The question is whether we let them stay buried or whether we dig them up and face them. The sun was rising now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful, indifferent. The kind of morning that promised nothing but delivered everything. Kate shouldered her rifle. Let's go. People will be waking up soon. The town hall meeting was called for 7 in the morning. By 6:30, the small building was packed. Every resident of Blackwater Creek who could walk had crowded inside, their faces tight with fear and curiosity and the peculiar excitement that came from genuine crisis. Word had spread like wildfire through the small town. 3 strangers dead. Tommy Harrington saved. Catherine Brennan's name on everyone's lips. Speculation running rampant. Theories, building on theories until the truth was buried under layers of imagination. Kate stood at the back of the hall, her arms crossed, her face expressionless. She had changed into a clean dress, but kept the gun belt strapped to her hip. The twin Remington revolvers gleamed in the morning light, filtering through the windows. She made no attempt to hide them. Let them look, let them see. The time for hiding was over. Sheriff William Cooper stood at the front, trying to maintain order. At 55, Cooper was a man who had seen enough of life to know that simple explanations were usually lies and complicated truths were usually unbearable. His gray eyes swept the crowd, landing briefly on Kate before moving on. There was something in his gaze, not quite approval, not quite condemnation, recognition perhaps. "All right," he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "All right, quiet down." The murmuring subsided to a low buzz, the sound of suppressed panic-controlled fear. "We're here because something happened last night, something that needs addressing." Cooper's voice was steady, authoritative, the voice of law in a place where law was more concept than reality. 3 men were killed. Tommy Harrington was rescued from what appears to have been a kidnapping, and we need to understand exactly what occurred. "She killed them," a voice called from the crowd. It was Martin Hayes, owner of the general store, a man who had never liked Kate's quiet competence, who saw her success as commentary on his failures. Shot them dead like it was nothing, like killing was as natural as breathing. "They were going to kill the boy," someone else said. "We don't know that." "I saw the bodies," another voice interjected. "Clean shots, professional. That ain't the work of someone defending themselves. That's the work of someone who knows how to kill." Cooper raised his hands for silence. The gesture was firm, but not aggressive. "Miss Brennan, would you care to explain what happened?" All eyes turned to Kate. She stood motionless for a moment, feeling the weight of their stares. These people, her neighbors for 8 years, strangers who had lived beside her without knowing her at all. She had served them, sold them goods, helped them when they needed help, and they had accepted her service while keeping her at arm's length, sensing something wrong, something other, without being able to name it. She stepped forward, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. Each step was measured, deliberate. When she reached the front of the hall, she turned to face them all. Every face, every pair of eyes. "My name is not Catherine Brennan." The room went utterly still. Even breathing seemed to stop. "My name is Elena Volkov. 20 years ago I was known as Deadeye Volkov. I rode with the Jameson Raiders for 7 years. I robbed banks and stagecoaches across 3 territories: Kansas, Colorado, California. I killed 17 men. Some deserved it. Some didn't. I kept count for a while, then stopped. It didn't matter anymore. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Kate's voice remained steady, matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather or inventory. "The last job I did with the Raiders, our leader, Jameson, decided to execute the hostages. 12 people, women, children, old men. He said we couldn't leave witnesses. I told him no. He pulled his gun on me, so I shot him. Killed him instantly. Then I freed the hostages and ran." "Why?" The question came from Lily Harrington, her face pale but determined. Her hand gripped her grandson Tommy's shoulder. "Why did you lie to us? Why hide for 20 years? Because the truth would have gotten me killed. Or hanged? Or both." Kate's eyes swept the crowd, meeting each gaze in turn. "I wanted peace. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to be someone other than a killer. And for 20 years, I was. I ran this store. I helped this town. I hurt no one. I was Catherine Brennan, and Elena Volkov was dead." "Until last night," Cooper said quietly. "Until last night." Kate pulled the wanted poster from her coat and held it up for all to see. "One of the men I killed was carrying this. Someone knows I'm here. Someone sent them to find me. Or kill me. I don't know which. I don't know who. But they found me." Who Abigail Chen stood near the front, her medical bag clutched in her hands like a shield. Her voice was controlled, but Kate could hear the tremor beneath. "Who would come looking for you after 20 years? Kate's jaw tightened. "I don't know. I made many enemies, the families of the men I killed, former gang members who survived, lawmen who never stopped looking. The list is long. So what now?" Marcus Sullivan stood, his bulk impressive even in the crowded hall. "You expect us to just accept this? Accept that we've been living next to a wanted criminal for 8 years? "I expect nothing," Kate said. "I'm telling you the truth because you deserve to know. Because those men came here looking for me, and more will come. You need to decide if you want me to leave or if you want me to stay and face what's coming." The hall erupted in voices. Fear, anger, confusion. Arguments breaking out in pockets. Some demanded Kate leave immediately. Others argued she had saved Tommy's life, that she deserved consideration. The noise built and built until it became a single roar of panic and rage and terror. "Enough!" The word cracked through the chaos like a whip, like thunder, like the voice of God passing judgment. Everyone turned to see Reverend Samuel Holt standing, his face grave, his eyes burning with intensity that transformed him from mild minister to something harder, older, more dangerous. "You want to cast out Miss Brennan, fine. But first you should know something. You should know who I am." Holt's voice carried to every corner of the hall, filling the space. "My name is not Samuel Holt. It's Jacob Morse. 20 years ago, I rode with the Coltrane gang. We robbed trains and murdered guards. I personally killed 5 men, not in self-defense, not in the heat of battle. I executed them on orders from my gang leader. I was there when Elena Volkov shot Jameson to save those hostages in Missouri. I saw her turn on her own gang, saw her give up everything she had built to do the right thing. And after that day, I made a choice. I walked away, changed my name, found God, became a man of peace." The silence was absolute, suffocating. Holt looked at Kate, then back to the crowd. "If you condemn her for her past, you condemn me as well, and you condemn every person in this town who came here running from something. Because that's what Blackwater Creek is, isn't it? A town of runaways, of people who couldn't make it anywhere else, of sinners hoping for redemption." Sheriff Cooper stood slowly. His face was unreadable, carved from stone. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion, with weight, with the burden of secrets carried too long. "Before I was William Cooper, I was Billy Cord, Texas Ranger for 8 years, then hired gun for 6 more. I killed men for money, good men, bad men. Didn't matter as long as the price was right. Didn't ask questions, didn't lose sleep. I came to Blackwater Creek 15 years ago to die. I was sick with what I'd done, sick with who I'd become. I was going to ride out into the wilderness and put a bullet in my head." His hand trembled as he removed his badge and set it on the table before him. "Instead, I found a reason to live. This town, these people, the chance to be someone better than who I was. So if we're casting out sinners, start with me." The hall was frozen. 3 confessions, 3 ghosts made flesh, 3 lives laid bare. Cooper looked at the assembled townspeople, his gaze moving from face to face. This town was built by people running from their pasts. Every single one of us came here because we couldn't be who we were somewhere else. Maybe that makes us sinners. Maybe it makes us cowards, or maybe it makes us human. But if we turn on each other now, if we cast out our own for the crime of having been something else before, we're no better than the people we ran from." Marcus Sullivan, the saloon owner, stood. His voice was hoarse, uncertain. "What do we do? If more men come, if they bring an army—" Cooper picked up his badge and pinned it back to his vest. The gesture was defiant, final. "We protect our own. Whatever's coming, we face it together. As a town, as a community, or we scatter and die separately. Your choice." Kate felt something unfamiliar in her chest. Not quite hope. Hope was too fragile, too dangerous, but something close. Something that felt like the possibility of belonging. The meeting dissolved slowly, people filing out in small groups, their conversations hushed and urgent. Kate remained standing at the front, watching them go. Some glanced at her with fear, others with something that might have been respect, most with confusion, trying to reconcile the woman they knew with the killer she admitted to being. Abigail Chen approached last. She stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance, her dark eyes unreadable. 17 men, she said quietly. "Yes, that's a lot of blood, a lot of death. Yes." Abigail nodded slowly, her face a mask. "My brother died 18 years ago, David Chen. He was driving a stagecoach in Wyoming. Bandits stopped it. The passengers said the robbers shot him for no reason. Just panicked and fired. Killed him instantly." She paused. "He was 22 years old, kind, gentle, going to be a teacher." Kate's stomach went cold. The world tilted. "I don't remember every face. Every job blurred together after a while. No, I don't suppose you would. But I remember his face. Every day. Every single day for 18 years. Abigail's voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it worse. "I came to Blackwater Creek to find you. Took me 3 years to track you down. Another year to get established here, to become part of the community, to earn your trust." Kate's hand moved toward her holster, then stopped. "Why tell me this? Because I don't know anymore." Abigail's eyes glistened. "I came here to kill you, to make you pay for what you took from me. And then I saw you save Tommy, saw you sit with Mrs. Peterson all night when she was sick, saw you give food to families who couldn't pay, saw you be kind when you thought no one was watching. And now I don't know who you are, monster or saint, killer or savior." "I'm both," Kate said quietly. "That's the truth no one wants to hear. I did terrible things, and I've tried to do good things. Both are real. Both are me." Abigail turned and walked away, leaving Kate standing alone in the empty hall. Outside, Blackwater Creek continued its morning routine, shops opening, people going about their business. The machinery of small-town life grinding forward, indifferent to revelations and confessions. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning frost, painting the mountains in gold and shadow. That night, Kate sat in her room above the trading post, the Kentucky rifle across her lap. Below the town was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that came before storms, before violence, before the world changed forever. She thought about Abigail's brother, about David Chen, 22 years old, killed by her hand in a moment of panic she could not even remember. About the 17 men whose faces she could not recall, but whose deaths she carried nonetheless. About Tommy's frightened eyes and Jessie's baby hands reaching for her before she turned away. About all the ghosts that crowded close, demanding acknowledgement, demanding payment for debts that could never be repaid. The truth had found her, just as Holt said it would. And now she would have to live with it, or die with it, one or the other. A sound from the street below pulled her attention to the window. Kate moved the curtain aside, fractionally peering down. In the moonlight, she saw a single rider approaching from the east, moving slowly, deliberately, as if he knew exactly where he was going and had all the time in the world to get there. The rider stopped at the edge of town, just beyond the last building, a dark silhouette against the silver landscape. He did not dismount, did not call out, did not make any move to enter the town, just sat his horse looking down Main Street toward the trading post, toward Kate's window. She could not see his face. Too far, too dark. But something in his posture, in the way he held himself, made her blood run cold. It was the stillness of a predator, the patience of someone who knew how to wait. After a long moment, the rider's hand moved, slowly. deliberately. He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that might have been greeting, or might have been salute, or might have been promise. Then he turned his horse and disappeared back into the darkness, leaving only the echo of hoofbeats that faded like whispers. Kate stood at the window for an hour watching, waiting, the rifle loaded and ready, her breathing steady, her hands calm. Dawn would come soon, and with it answers to questions she had spent 20 years trying to forget. She looked down at the wanted poster on the table beside her. Elena Volkov, dead eye. A ghost from a past that refused to stay buried. Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of snow and something else. Something that smelled like smoke and blood and reckoning. The rifle was clean, the ammunition ready, her resolve absolute. Whatever was coming, she would face it. Not as Catherine Brennan, shopkeeper and widow who wanted nothing but peace, but as Elena Volkov, the woman who never missed. The killer who had tried to bury her guns but found them waiting in the darkness, patient and eternal. The dead did not stay buried in Blackwater Creek, especially not the dead who were still breathing. Tomorrow would bring truth. Tomorrow would bring consequence. Tomorrow would bring the son she had abandoned 20 years ago, grown into a man who had been taught to hate her, riding with the gang that wanted her dead. But she did not know that yet. Not yet. For now she only knew that the past had found her, and this time there would be no running, no hiding, no becoming someone else. This time Elena Volkov would stand and face what was coming, even if it killed her, especially if it killed her, because some debts could only be paid in blood. The rider came at dawn, not with violence, not with thunder, but with the patient certainty of someone who knew fear was a weapon sharper than any blade. The three horses moved down Main Street in single file, their hooves striking the frozen ground in a rhythm that sounded like a heartbeat, slow, steady, inevitable. Elena stood at the window of the trading post, the curtain pulled back just enough to see without being seen. Her hands were calm, her breathing even. But inside, in the deep places where truth lived, something ancient and terrible was waking up. Recognition, the kind that came not from seeing, but from knowing, from sensing the presence of something that shared your blood. The lead rider stopped in the center of town directly in front of the sheriff's office. He sat his horse with the easy confidence of someone who had never been told no and lived. Tall, lean, one eye covered with a black patch, the other scanning the buildings with the methodical attention of a man cataloging targets. His duster was travel-worn but quality. His gun belt sat low on his hips, the holsters positioned for a cross draw. Professional, practiced. Nathaniel Wallace. Even without the descriptions she had heard, Elena would have known him. Killers recognized each other the way wolves recognized pack. Behind him rode two others. A woman small and compact with dark hair pulled back tight enough to hurt. Her hands rested on the twin knives strapped to her thighs. Eliza Morgan, the Sparrow they called her, because she was small and fast and left you dead before you realized she had moved. And the third rider. Elena's breath caught in her throat, stopped. The world narrowed to a single point, a single face. The young man who rode behind Wallace was 23, dark hair that fell across his forehead, strong jaw, high cheekbones. He sat his horse with natural grace, his body moving with the animal as if they were one creature, and on his chin just left of center a small mole, the same mole his father had carried. The same mole Elena had kissed 1,000 times when he was an infant, when the world was young and hope was still possible. Jesse, her son. The son she had left in the rain 20 years ago, wrapped in a blanket on the steps of a church with a note pinned to his chest. His name is Jesse. Please keep him safe. I cannot. Elena's hand found the window frame, gripping it hard enough to hurt. The wood creaked under her fingers. 20 years of wondering if he had survived. If he had been taken in. If he had grown up hating her or not knowing her at all. 20 years of carrying the weight of abandonment, of telling herself she had done the right thing, the only thing, even as the guilt ate her from the inside like cancer. And here he was, alive, strong, beautiful, riding with the man who wanted her dead. Sheriff Cooper emerged from his office, his hand resting on his holster. Not gripping, not yet, but ready. But He had slept in his clothes, if he had slept at all. The town hall meeting had ended only 6 hours ago. Since then, he had been preparing, organizing, trying to transform frightened shopkeepers into something resembling a militia. It was not going well. "Gentlemen," Cooper said, his voice carried in the cold morning air. "Lady, welcome to Blackwater Creek. I'm Sheriff William Cooper." Wallace smiled. The expression did not reach his remaining eye. "Sheriff, we appreciate the hospitality." His voice was cultured, educated. The accent was difficult to place. East Coast, originally worn smooth by years in the territories. "We're looking for someone. Perhaps you can help us." "Depends on who you're looking for." "Elena Volkov." Wallace let the name hang in the air like smoke. "Also known as Deadeye. We have reason to believe she's been living in this town for some time. Under a different name, of course. She's good at hiding. Always has been." Cooper's expression did not change. "Can't say I know anyone by that name." No, Wallace's smile widened. "That's unfortunate. Because we're not leaving until we find her, and we're willing to be patient. Very patient." He gestured to the buildings around them. "Charming town you have here. Be a shame if something happened to it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a statement of fact." Wallace dismounted with fluid grace. Jesse and Eliza followed. When things get in our way, those things tend to stop existing. It's not personal. Just the natural order. Cooper's hand tightened on his gun. "You should leave. Now. Before this becomes a problem." Wallace laughed. A genuine sound full of humor. "Oh, Sheriff. This became a problem the moment Elena Volkov shot my business partner 20 years ago. Shot him in the face to save a group of hostages who weren't worth the bullets she wasted on them. Dmitry Volkov and I had an arrangement, a partnership, and she destroyed it. Dmitry Volkov was insane." The voice came from behind Cooper. Elena stood on the porch of the trading post, the Kentucky rifle cradled in her arms. He was killing innocent people. Children. I stopped him. Wallace turned slowly, his one eye fixing on her with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. "There she is, the legend herself. You know I've been looking for you for a very long time, Elena. Sent men. Hired trackers. 3 of my best scouts dead 2 nights ago. Shot in the dark by someone who never misses. I suppose that brings your count to 20 now. 20 lives taken. Does it get easier, Elena? Or do the numbers just stop mattering? Spent more money than you're worth. And here you are, hiding in the middle of nowhere, pretending to be someone you're not. You know I've been looking for you for a very long time, Elena. Sent men, hired trackers, spent more money than you're worth. And here you are, hiding in the middle of nowhere, pretending to be someone you're not. I'm not pretending anymore. No, I can see that." Wallace's gaze moved to the rifle in her hands. "Still carrying that antique? You always were sentimental." He took a step forward. "Jesse, come here." The young man dismounted and walked to Wallace's side. His movements were careful, controlled. His hand hovered near his holster. When he looked at Elena, his face showed nothing. No recognition, no emotion, just the flat assessment of a predator evaluating prey. Elena's heart shattered, reformed, shattered again. "Jesse," Wallace said, his voice almost gentle, paternal, "this is the woman I told you about. The woman who killed your father. The woman who abandoned you in the rain when you were 3 years old, left you to die on church steps." He placed a hand on Jesse's shoulder. "Look at her. Really look. Do you see any remorse, any love?" Jesse's jaw tightened. His eyes, pale blue like Elena's own, burned with something that might have been rage or might have been pain or might have been both twisted together until they were indistinguishable. "I see a coward," Jesse said. His voice was young, but hard beaten into shape by years of Wallace's training. "I see someone who runs from consequences." Elena forced herself to speak. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. "I left you to save you. Your father was going to kill us both. I had no choice." "There's always a choice." Jesse's hand moved to his gun. "You chose yourself. You chose survival over your own son. I chose you." Elena's eyes burned, but no tears came. She had cried herself dry years ago. "If I had kept you, every enemy your father made would have hunted you, tortured you, used you to get to me. I gave you a chance at a normal life." "How did that work out?" Jesse gestured to himself, to Wallace. Does this look normal to you? Wallace smiled satisfied. Enough talk. He raised his voice, addressing the town. People of Blackwater Creek, you have harbored a wanted criminal, a murderer, a woman with a price on her head. We are here to collect that price. You have a choice. Give her to us, and we leave peacefully. Protect her, and we burn this town to ash. You have until noon to decide. He turned and walked toward the hotel, Jesse and Eliza following. Their boots echoed on the wooden sidewalk. At the hotel entrance, Jesse paused. He looked back at Elena, his face still showing nothing. Then he went inside. The emergency meeting was smaller this time. Just the core group: Cooper, Elena, Reverend Holt, Marcus Sullivan, Dr. Abigail Chen. They gathered in the back room of the trading post, the door locked, the curtains drawn. We can't give her up, Holt said immediately. That's not who we are. Who we are is farmers and shopkeepers, Sullivan countered, not soldiers. We can't fight professional killers. His voice was strained. I've got a wife, children. I can't ask them to die for this. Then don't, Elena said quietly. I'll leave, right out before noon. They'll follow me. You'll be safe. Cooper shook his head. They won't follow you. They'll burn the town anyway. Make an example. Men like Wallace don't leave witnesses. So what do? Sullivan spread his hands. We have maybe a dozen men who can hold a rifle. Most of them have never fired at anything but deer. Wallace's people are professionals. We make them think we're giving in, Elena said. Her mind was working, falling into old patterns. Tactical thinking. Assessing terrain. Counting assets. I go out at noon. Surrender. But I'll have a plan. What plan? Cooper asked. I kill them before they kill me. The room fell silent. Abigail spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried. There's another option. We could negotiate, offer them money, safe passage out of the territory. They don't want money, Elena said. Wallace wants revenge, and Jesse wants to prove something. To himself, to Wallace, maybe to me. She looked at Abigail. Money won't solve this. Abigail held her gaze for a long moment. Something passed between them. Recognition, understanding. Then Abigail nodded and looked away. We need to know their positions, Cooper said, where they're staying, what they're planning. If we're going to fight, we need intelligence. I can get that, Holt offered. They don't know me. I can talk to them. Minister visiting new arrivals? Too dangerous, Elena said. Everything's dangerous now. Holt stood. I'll go to the hotel, see what I can learn. After he left, the group sat in uncomfortable silence. Outside, the town was holding its breath. Shops closed, streets empty, everyone waiting for noon, for the moment when choices would narrow to violence or surrender. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the place she had called home for 8 years. The buildings she knew, the people she had served, the life she had built from nothing, all of it hanging by a thread. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I brought this here. This is my fault, no, Cooper said firmly. This is Wallace's fault, and the fault of everyone who taught that boy to hate instead of love. He moved to stand beside her. We protect our own Elena. That's what communities do. I've never been part of a community before. Elena's voice was barely audible. I don't know how. You learn, same as everything else. The confrontation happened at 11:30. Elena was checking ammunition in the trading post when the door opened. She turned hand, moving to her holster, then froze. Jesse stood in the doorway, alone. His hands were empty, held away from his body. Behind him, the street was deserted. I'm not here to fight, he said, just to talk. Elena's hand remained on her gun. Talk then. Jesse closed the door behind him, moved deeper into the store. His eyes scanned the shelves, the counter, the rifle mounted above the door. Taking in details, building a map. This is where you've been living, running a store, selling flour and coffee. He looked at her. Seems peaceful. It was. Wallace says you killed 17 men. Is that true? Yes. He says you shot my father in cold blood. Your father was trying to kill me. And you. Elena's voice was steady. He had become something dark, something broken. The man I loved died long before I pulled the trigger. You loved him. Yes. More than I thought possible. Then why? Because love isn't enough. Elena moved from behind the counter, maintaining distance. Your father's mind broke. Maybe it was the war. Maybe it was something that was always there waiting. But by the end he saw enemies everywhere. He beat me, threatened you. He was going to kill us both, rather than let me leave. So you killed him first. So I survived. And I made sure you could survive too, by abandoning me. Jesse's voice cracked. By leaving me on church steps like garbage. By giving you a chance. Elena's control was slipping. Every word was a blade in her chest. I was 23, wanted by the law, hunted by your father's enemies. If I had kept you, you would have died. Or worse, grown up like me, like Wallace. A killer. I did grow up like that. Jesse's eyes blazed. Wallace found me 2 days after you left, took me in, raised me, taught me everything. How to shoot, how to fight, how to hate the woman who threw me away. He taught you lies, did he? Jesse pulled something from his pocket, a locket, old, tarnished. He opened it, showing Elena the contents. A tiny photograph, Elena at 23, holding an infant, smiling. Do you remember this? Elena's breath caught. She remembered. The photograph had been taken by a traveling photographer in St. Louis. 1 week before Dimitri's madness had fully manifested. 1 week before everything fell apart. I found it in the church, Jesse said, with a note. His name is Jesse. Please keep him safe. I cannot. He closed the locket. Every night for 20 years I've looked at this, wondered who you were, why you left. Wallace said you were a monster, a killer without conscience. And what do you think now? Jesse's face contorted. Pain, anger, confusion, all of it warring for dominance. I don't know. I came here to kill you, to prove to Wallace I was strong, to prove to myself I didn't need a mother. He looked at the locket. But standing here looking at you, I don't know what I feel. Elena took a careful step forward. Jesse, I know Wallace raised you, fed you, kept you alive. But he did it for revenge, not love. He used you as a weapon against me. Maybe. Jesse's hand moved to his gun. But he's the one who was there. When I was hungry. When I was scared. When I needed someone. He was there. Where were you running? Hiding. Trying to become someone who deserved to live. Elena's voice broke. I thought about you every day. Every single day. Wondered if you were safe. If you were happy. If you hated me. I did hate you. Jesse's eyes glistened. I hated you so much it burned. It was the only thing that kept me warm some nights. And now I don't know what I feel. Jesse holstered his gun. But noon is coming, and Wallace expects me to stand with him, to help him kill you. He moved toward the door. I need to decide who I am, the son of a monster, or the son of a woman who made impossible choices. He left without looking back. Elena stood alone in the store, her body shaking. The conversation had torn open wounds she had thought scarred over. She moved to the chair behind the counter and sat her head in her hands. For the first time in 20 years, she allowed herself to cry. 10 minutes later, through the window, she saw Jesse return to the hotel, saw Wallace emerge to meet him, saw the older man's hand on Jesse's shoulder, possessive claiming, saw Jesse's head bow, as if under a weight he couldn't escape. Not yet, Elena thought, wiping her tears. He's not free yet, but soon. If I survive noon, soon. At 11:45, Reverend Holt returned. His face was pale, his hands shook. He gathered the group in the back room again, his voice urgent. Wallace has positioned men around town. Eliza is on the hotel roof, clear shot at anyone on Main Street. One of his associates is covering the north road, another the south. He's boxed us in. How many total? Cooper asked. Just the 3 of them. Wallace, Jesse, and Eliza. But they've positioned themselves perfectly. If we fight, people will die. Lots of people. Then we don't fight, Sullivan said. We give him what he wants. No. The voice came from the doorway. Abigail stepped into the room. She closed the door behind her, her face set with determination. We can't give her up. Because Wallace won't stop with Elena. How do you know that? Cooper asked. Because I've been talking to him. Abigail's voice was steady. I've been passing him information since he arrived. The room exploded, shouting, accusations. Sullivan lunged toward Abigail, but Cooper intercepted him. Everyone shut up, Cooper commanded. Let her speak. Abigail met Elena's gaze. The doctor's eyes were red-haunted. My brother was David Chen. 18 years ago, the Jameson Raiders robbed a stagecoach he was driving in Wyoming. He was killed, shot in the chest, 22 years old. She took a shaking breath. I spent 3 years tracking Elena here, another year becoming part of the community. I wanted revenge. I wanted her to suffer the way I suffered. So you betrayed us, Sullivan spat. No. Abigail shook her head. I gave Wallace basic information, where Elena lived, her routine. But I also learned something. Wallace doesn't just want Elena dead. He wants to destroy everything she's built, the town, the people. He wants her to watch it all burn before he kills her. How do you know this? Elena asked quietly. Because he told me. Abigail's voice was barely audible. He was bragging, enjoying the anticipation. He said the sweetest revenge is making someone watch everything they love die first. Silence fell over the room, heavy, suffocating. I'm sorry, Abigail whispered. I came here for revenge. And I realized I became the monster I was hunting. She looked at Elena. Your raid killed my brother, but Wallace's plan would kill dozens. Children, families, innocent people. I can't allow that. Elena stood slowly. Her face showed no anger, no judgment, just tired understanding. You did what you thought was right. I would have done the same. How can you forgive me? I can't. Elena's voice was flat. But I understand you. That's different. Cooper cut through the emotion. We need a plan, now. Noon is minutes away. I have one, Elena said, but you won't like it. After everyone left, Elena remained in the back room of the trading post. She didn't light the lamp, didn't move, just sat in the darkness, letting it press against her like water. On the table before her lay 3 objects, the wanted poster, 20 years old, Elena Volkov, dead or alive. A ghost-made paper, the daguerreotype of Thomas, her husband, her anchor, the man who had seen her worst self and loved her anyway. And tucked behind Thomas's image, a smaller photograph. Emily, 5 years old, forever 5. Elena picked up Emily's picture. In the moonlight, she could just make out the child's features. Her features, Thomas's smile. The fever had come so suddenly. One day Emily was laughing, chasing butterflies. The next, burning with heat that no medicine could touch. The doctor had shaken his head. Nothing to be done. Prepare for the worst. The worst had come, or so Elena had believed. But the coffin had been so light when they lowered it, so impossibly light. Elena had told herself it was shock grief. Children were small. Of course, the coffin was light. But sometimes in the darkest hours before dawn she wondered if the fever had truly taken her daughter, or if something else had. I'm sorry, Elena whispered to the silence, to the ghosts, to herself. I tried to be what you needed. I tried to be clean, but blood calls to blood. And tomorrow I might die being exactly what I ran from. The photographs didn't answer. They never did. Outside a dog barked. Somewhere a door closed. Life continuing while Elena sat with her dead. She thought about Jesse, about the son she had given up to save, about whether saving someone by leaving them was still love or just cowardice dressed up in noble language. She thought about Wallace, about Dmitri, about all the men she had killed and all the reasons that had seemed so clear at the time. She thought about tomorrow, about blood and bullets, and the possibility that this was how her story ended, not in peace, not in redemption, but in violence, the way it had always been meant to end. The Kentucky rifle leaned against the wall, silent, waiting. Elena sat with it, with her ghosts, with the crushing weight of choice. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15. No music, no sound but her breathing and the wind outside. Just Elena Volkov and the long night before the reckoning. At precisely noon, the church bell rang. Elena walked down Main Street alone, no weapons visible, hands at her sides. Her steps were measured unhurried. She had dressed simply. Blue dress, leather boots, hair pulled back. She looked like what she had pretended to be for 8 years. A shopkeeper, a woman of no particular importance. But her eyes told a different story. Wallace stood in the center of the street, Jesse and Eliza flanking him. They formed a triangle, each positioned to cover different angles. Professional, practiced. Elena stopped 10 feet away. Behind her, hidden in buildings, Cooper and his makeshift militia waited, watching, ready. "You came?" Wallace said. "I'm impressed. Most people run when they can. I've run enough." "Yes, you have." Wallace smiled. "And now it ends. 20 years of waiting, of planning, of preparing this moment. Do you know what I'm going to do?" "Kill me, eventually. But first, I'm going to make you watch this town burn. Every building, every person who sheltered you. And you'll know it's your fault. That your cowardice, your selfishness brought this reckoning." Jesse shifted uncomfortably. "Wallace, this wasn't the plan. Plans change, boy." Wallace didn't look at him. "This is about making a point, about showing the world what happens to people who cross me." "You're insane," Elena said quietly. "No, I'm thorough." Wallace drew his gun. "Jesse, kill her." Jesse's hand moved to his holster, stopped. His face was torn, agonized. "I said kill her," Wallace commanded. "No." Jesse's voice was barely audible. "What I said, no." Jesse looked at Wallace, then at Elena. "You raised me, taught me. But you lied to me. About her, about everything. This isn't about justice. It's about your ego." Wallace's face darkened. "You ungrateful little bastard. I saved you. You used me." Jesse's hand moved away from his gun. "I'm done being your weapon, then you'll die with her." Wallace raised his gun, aiming at Jesse. Elena moved. Not fast. She didn't need to be fast, just precise. Her hand went to the small of her back where a derringer was hidden. She drew and fired in a single motion. The small caliber bullet took Wallace in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. His shot went wide. Chaos erupted. Eliza dropped from the hotel roof, knives flashing. She landed between Elena and Wallace, her blades moving in patterns too fast to follow. Elena dodged backward, the derringer useless in close quarters. Cooper and his men burst from cover, guns drawn, but they were too far away, too slow. Jesse stood frozen, torn between two parents, the monster who raised him, the mother who abandoned him. Eliza's knife scored a line across Elena's cheek. Blood welled. Elena grabbed the woman's wrist, twisted, and threw her toward the trading post. Eliza recovered mid-air, landing in a crouch. Wallace was back on his feet, his left arm hanging useless, but his right hand held his gun steady. He aimed at Elena, finger tightening on the trigger. Jesse shot him. The bullet took Wallace in the chest just left of center. The old man's eye widened in surprise. Betrayal. He looked at Jesse, mouth working, trying to form words. "You were supposed to be my legacy," Wallace whispered. Blood bubbled on his lips. "I'm my own legacy," Jesse said. His gun was steady. His voice was not. Wallace fell, hit the ground, did not move again. Eliza screamed, a sound of pure rage. She lunged at Jesse, knives raised. Elena intercepted her, tackling the smaller woman to the ground. They rolled, struggling. Eliza's blade caught Elena in the side, sliding between ribs. Elena gasped but didn't release her grip. Cooper reached them, placed his gun against Eliza's head. "It's over. Drop the knives." Eliza looked at Wallace's body, at Jesse standing over it, at Elena bleeding beside her. She dropped the knives. "It's over," Cooper repeated. That night, after the wounded had been treated and the dead buried, Elena sat alone in her room. The wound in her side had been stitched by Abigail, who had worked in silence, her face unreadable. A knock at the door. Elena reached for her gun before remembering. She set it down. "Come in." Jesse entered. He moved awkwardly, uncertain. His gun belt was gone. His hands were empty. He looked young, lost. "Can I sit?" Elena nodded to the chair by the window. They sat in silence for long minutes. Outside, Blackwater Creek settled into uneasy peace. Tomorrow would bring questions, investigations, consequences. But tonight there was just quiet. "I killed the only father I ever knew," Jesse said finally. "He was going to kill you." Elena's voice was gentle. "You did what you had to, like you did when you killed my real father." "Yes." Jesse looked at her, really looked. His eyes traced the scar on her face, the lines of age and pain, the evidence of a hard life lived. "I don't know if I can forgive you for leaving me. I don't expect you to, but I want to try." Jesse's voice broke. "I want to know who you are, who I could have been if things were different." Elena felt tears on her face. "We can't change the past, but maybe we can build something new, if you're willing." "I don't know what I'm willing to do," Jesse stood. But I'm not leaving. Not yet. I need time to figure out who I am without Wallace telling me. Take all the time you need. Jessie moved to the door, paused. Thank you for leaving me at that church. I hated you for it. But you were right. If you had kept me, I would have died, or become something worse than Wallace made me. After he left, Elena sat at the window watching the stars emerge. Below, Marcus Sullivan was boarding up the damaged buildings. Dr. Abigail Chen was making her final rounds. Cooper was organizing the night watch, a community knitting itself back together. For the first time in 20 years, Helena Volkov felt like she belonged, not as Catherine Brennan, the mask she wore, but as herself. Scars and sins and all. The past had come for her, and she had survived. But in the distance beyond the mountains, another rider was coming, a woman with ice in her veins and murder in her heart. Anna Volkov, Dmitri's sister, Jessie's aunt, and she had questions that only blood could answer. But that was a reckoning for another day. Tonight, Elena was home. Wallace's body lay in the street for 3 hours before anyone dared move it. Not from fear, not from reverence, but from the simple, stunning disbelief that he was actually dead. Men like Nathaniel Wallace were supposed to be eternal, forces of nature, hurricanes in human form. You survived them, or you didn't, but you never imagined defeating them. Yet here he was, still, silent, a spreading pool of blood beneath him, turning the dust to mud. His single eye stared at the Montana sky, seeing nothing, reflecting everything. The perfect blue of autumn, the clouds like torn cotton, the circling hawks that had already begun to sense opportunity. Elena sat on the steps of the trading post, one hand pressed against the wound in her side. Blood seeped between her fingers, warm and insistent. Abigail had said the knife missed anything vital, but vital was a relative term. Everything was vital when you were trying to stay alive. Jessie stood over Wallace's corpse, his smoking gun still in his hand. He had not moved since pulling the trigger, had not spoken, had not even blinked as far as Elena could tell. He just stood there, a statue of a young man caught in the moment of destroying his entire world. Sheriff Cooper was securing Eliza Morgan. The woman had stopped fighting once Wallace felt all the rage draining out of her like water from a cracked vessel. Now she sat against the wall of the saloon, hands bound, eyes distant. She hummed something under her breath, a lullaby maybe, or a funeral dirge. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. The town emerged slowly from hiding. Faces appeared in windows, doors cracked open. People stepped onto porches blinking in the afternoon sun, as if waking from a nightmare, to find the monster actually dead. Marcus Sullivan was the first to approach Wallace's body. He prodded it with his boot, tentative, half expecting it to spring back to life. When nothing happened, he looked at Elena with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Well," Sullivan said, "ain't that something?" Reverend Holt came next, Bible clutched in his hands like a shield. He knelt beside the body, checking for a pulse he knew he wouldn't find. Professional habit from his days as Jacob Morse, when he'd stood over enough corpses to know the difference between dying and dead. "He's gone," Holt confirmed. Then softer, "God have mercy on his soul." "I wouldn't hold your breath on that one, Reverend," Cooper said. He finished binding Eliza's hands and left her under the watch of Deputy Mitchell, who looked like he might vomit or faint, or both. "Some souls are too broken for mercy." Elena finally stood, her legs unsteady beneath her, the world tilted right at itself. She walked to where Jessie stood, each step an exercise in willpower over biology. When she reached him, she placed a hand on his shoulder. Jessie flinched, but he didn't pull away. "You did what you had to do," Elena said quietly. "Did I?" Jessie's voice was hollow. "Or did I just prove I'm exactly what he made me, a killer, like you, like him?" He looked down at the gun in his hand as if seeing it for the first time. "My first kill was my father, not the father who made me, but the only father I ever knew. He was going to kill you, kill all of us." "I know." Jessie's hand tightened on the gun until his knuckles went white. "That's what makes it worse, that I don't regret it, that part of me is glad he's dead." He finally looked at Elena, and his eyes were older than they had been an hour ago. "What does that make me?" "Human," Elena said. "Just human." They buried Wallace that evening in the same cemetery where they had buried the 3 men Elena killed 2 nights ago. No headstone, no marker, just a hole in the ground and a pile of dirt. Some deaths deserved ceremony. This wasn't one of them. The town gathered not to mourn, but to witness, to confirm, to mark the ending of something and the uncertain beginning of something else. Reverend Holt said words over the grave, but they were perfunctory, mechanical. Even God's mercy had limits. Jesse stood apart from the others, his face a mask. He had cleaned Wallace's blood from his hands, but Elena suspected he could still feel it. Blood like that didn't wash away. It soaked in, became part of you. When the last shovel of dirt fell, people began to disperse, whispered conversations in the dying light, plans being made, normalcy trying to reassert itself. But Elena saw the glances directed her way, the calculations happening behind eyes, the question no one wanted to ask, but everyone was thinking, what now? She was still a wanted criminal, still had a price on her head. The wanted posters might be 20 years old, but murder didn't have a statute of limitations. Neither did robbery. The law would come eventually even to Blackwater Creek. And when it did, what would happen to the woman who had saved them, but also brought death to their doorstep? Sheriff Cooper approached as the crowd thinned. His face was grim, carved from stone and duty. "We need to talk. In my office. Now." Elena nodded. She had been expecting this. Cooper's office was small and cramped, smelling of old coffee and older regrets. He gestured for Elena to sit in the chair across from his desk. Then he pulled out a stack of papers, wanted posters. Some she recognized, some she didn't. "I've been doing research," Cooper said, "sending telegrams, calling in favors from my old life." He spread the posters across the desk like a dealer laying out cards. Elena Volkov, dead eye, wanted in 7 territories, 17 confirmed kills, dozens of robberies, and that's just what made it into official records. Elena said nothing. The evidence spoke for itself. "The reward is up to $2,000 now," Cooper continued. "Dead or alive. That's a fortune out here, enough to set a family up for life." He leaned back in his chair. "I could arrest you right now, put you in a cell, wait for the marshals, collect that bounty. Hell, half the town expects me to." "But you're not going to." "Didn't say that." Cooper's eyes were hard. "I'm sworn to uphold the law. The law says you're a criminal, that you need to face justice." "Then arrest me." Elena held out her wrists. "I won't fight." Cooper stared at her for a long moment. Then he cursed low and creative. "You know what the problem is with the law? It's blind, treats everyone the same, doesn't care about context, about change, about people who've spent 20 years trying to be better than they were. The law shouldn't care about that. Justice is supposed to be impartial. Justice is supposed to be a lot of things." Cooper gathered up the wanted posters and fed them into the pot-bellied stove in the corner, one by one. The paper caught fire, curled, blackened. But sometimes justice and what's right aren't the same thing. Elena watched her face burn, watched Elena Volkov turn to ash and smoke. "What are you doing? What I should have done 15 years ago, when I was Billy Cord and decided that being a hired gun wasn't who I wanted to be anymore." Cooper closed the stove door. "I'm giving you the same chance someone gave me, the chance to be someone else. Cooper, listen to me." He leaned forward, his voice intense. "That woman on those posters, she's dead. She died 20 years ago when she shot Jameson and walked away. What's sitting in front of me now is Catherine Brennan, shopkeeper, widow, woman who saved this town." He paused. "Woman who deserves a chance at peace." Elena felt something break inside her, not break violently, but crack like ice in spring. "I don't deserve peace. None of us do, but we take it anyway. Because the alternative is drowning in what we were." Cooper stood. "Go home, Catherine. Get that wound looked at properly. Rest. And tomorrow we figure out what comes next." Elena rose slowly, her side screaming. At the door, she paused. Why do this for me?" Cooper was silent for a long moment. Then, "Because 20 years ago, a sheriff in Texas looked at a man covered in blood and rage, and instead of shooting him, he said, 'You can be better than this.' And that man became William Cooper." He met her eyes. "We all need someone to believe we can change. Consider this me believing in you." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The wound in her side throbbed with each breath. Abigail had cleaned and stitched it again, her hands gentle, but her eyes still haunted by guilt and grief. "It's not infected," the doctor had said, "but you need to rest, really rest. No heroics." Elena had promised, but promises made in pain were easy to break. She sat by the window of her room, the Kentucky rifle across her lap. Below, the town was dark except for a few scattered lanterns. Cooper's deputies walked their rounds, normal resuming, or trying to. A knock at the door. Elena's hand moved to the rifle before she recognized the pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 2 more. Jesse. "Come in." Jesse entered carrying something wrapped in cloth. He looked exhausted. His eyes red-rimmed his movements, heavy with more than just fatigue. He sat in the chair across from her without asking permission. "Couldn't sleep either," Elena asked. "Every time I close my eyes I see him. Wallace. The way he looked when the bullet hit. Surprised. Like he never really believed I'd do it." Jesse unwrapped the cloth, revealing Wallace's gun belt. The holster was empty. "He used to let me clean these, his guns. Said it was important to respect your weapons, to understand them. He was right about that. He was right about a lot of things. That's what makes this so hard." Jesse's fingers traced the leather. "He taught me to read, to write, to think tactically. He made sure I had food and shelter when I had nothing. He saved my life a dozen times over. And he used you, shaped you into a weapon against me. I know." Jesse looked up, and the pain in his eyes was raw. "But he also tucked me in at night when I had nightmares, taught me to ride, told me stories. He was my father. In every way that mattered, even if it was all built on a lie." Elena understood. God help her, she understood. "You can hate him and miss him at the same time. That's allowed." "Is it because it feels like a betrayal? To you, to him, to everyone?" "Grief doesn't follow rules, Jesse. It just is." Elena set the rifle aside. "I killed your real father, and I loved him. Still love him in the broken way you love something that's gone. And I don't regret killing him because he would have killed us both. All those things are true, all at once." Jesse absorbed this. "How do you live with it?" "The contradiction, one day at a time. Some days better than others." Elena gestured to the gun belt. "What will you do with that?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it, destroy every reminder. But another part," he trailed off, "wants to keep it, because it's all you have left of him." "Yes? Then keep it. But don't wear it. Put it somewhere safe. Let it be a memory, not a destiny." Elena leaned forward, wincing at the pull in her side. "You're not Wallace. You're not Dmitri. You're Jesse, and you get to decide who that means." "I don't know how to do that. I've been what other people made me my whole life." "Then start small. Tomorrow choose one thing that's yours. Not what Wallace would want, not what I would want, yours, and build from there." Jesse nodded slowly. He stood to leave, then paused. Can I ask you something? Always. What was he like, my real father, before he became what he was?" Elena closed her eyes, reaching back across 20 years. "He was brilliant, funny. He could make me laugh until I cried. He saw the world differently than everyone else, found beauty in strange places, connections no one else saw." She opened her eyes. "And he loved you. Before his mind broke, he loved you more than anything. Would spend hours just watching you sleep like he couldn't believe something so perfect existed." Tears ran down Jesse's face. He didn't wipe them away. "Thank you for telling me that." After he left, Elena sat alone with the memory of Dmitri, the good man he'd been before the war and violence and hereditary madness destroyed him. She mourned him again, fresh as the first time, mourned the family they could have been, the life they could have lived. But she didn't regret surviving him, and she didn't regret giving Jesse a chance at life, even if that chance had been twisted by Wallace into something dark. Some choices were impossible. You made them anyway, and lived with the aftermath. 3 days later, Dr. Abigail Chen came to the trading post. Elena was inventorying supplies, trying to return to routine. Her side still hurt, but the wound was healing clean. She could move without gasping. Small victories. Abigail entered quietly, her medical bag clutched like a talisman. She looked thinner than 3 days ago, hollowed out. The weight of guilt did that to people. I'm leaving, Abigail said without preamble. Leaving Blackwater Creek. I've written to a colleague in Carson City. He needs a partner. It's time I moved on. Elena set down her pencil. Because of me. Because of what I did. What I almost did. Abigail's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. I betrayed you. Betrayed this town. Betrayed everything I claimed to believe in. How can I stay after that? You stopped Wallace. You saved lives. After I endangered them in the first place. Abigail moved deeper into the store. I told him where you lived, your routine, your weaknesses. I gave him everything he needed to destroy you. You didn't know what he planned. I should have known. I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to heal, not hurt. Abigail's eyes glistened. My brother would be ashamed of me. Elena came around the counter. Her side protested, but she ignored it. She stopped a few feet from Abigail. Your brother is dead because of me. You had every right to hate me, to want revenge. Rights don't matter. Actions do. Abigail looked up, meeting Elena's gaze. You killed David, but you also saved Tommy and Michael and probably a dozen others over the years. Who does that make you, monster or savior? Both? Neither. Just a person who made choices. Elena paused. Your brother. Tell me about him. What? I don't remember him. Don't remember that day. There were too many days like it. Too much blood. Too many faces. Elena's voice was soft. So tell me, who was David Chen? Abigail's tears came then, hot and fast. He was kind, gentle. He wanted to be a teacher, loved children, would spend his free time reading to orphans in San Francisco. He took that stagecoach job to save money for school. Her voice broke. He was going to change lives, and I spent 18 years hating you for taking that away. You should hate me, that's fair. But I don't. Not anymore. Abigail wiped her eyes. And I don't know what to do with that. If I'm not seeking revenge, who am I? Elena understood that question intimately. You're Abigail Chen. Doctor, healer, woman who made mistakes and owned them. She took a careful step forward. Don't leave. This town needs you. I need you to remind me that redemption isn't clean, that it's messy and complicated, and sometimes it means forgiving people who don't deserve it. I don't deserve forgiveness. None of us do, but we accept it anyway. Elena held out her hand. Stay, please. Help me figure out how to live with what we've done, how to be better than we were. Abigail stared at the offered hand. For a long moment she didn't move. Then slowly she reached out. Their hands met, clasped. Two women who had both lost brothers, both made terrible choices, both desperate to be more than their worst moments. One condition, Abigail said. Tell me about that day, the stagecoach. I need to know what happened. Elena nodded. It would hurt, worse than her physical wound, but Abigail deserved the truth. They sat together, and Elena told her about a young, scared, dead-eye Volkov, cornered by lawmen making choices born of panic and desperation. About a driver who reached for something, and Elena who fired before thinking, before seeing he was unarmed, before realizing he was just a young man in the wrong place at the worst possible time. It took an hour. Elena remembered more than she thought she would. The details came back in fragments, cutting like glass. When she finished, both women were crying. He died instantly, Elena said. If that helps. It doesn't, but thank you for being honest. Abigail squeezed her hand. I'll stay, but not for you, for David, because he would have wanted me to heal, not destroy. That's good enough. The rider came at sunset on the 5th day. Elena was closing the store when she felt it, that prickling on the back of her neck, the animal awareness of being watched. She moved to the window, scanning the street. A woman sat on a black horse at the edge of town. Even at a distance, even in fading light, Elena recognized the posture, the way she held herself. The cold patience of a predator who knew her prey couldn't escape. The woman was tall, lean, with silver blonde hair pulled back in a severe braid. She wore black from head to toe. And even from here, even without seeing her face clearly, Elena knew who she was. Anna Volkov, Dmitri's younger sister, Jesse's aunt. Elena's blood went cold. She had heard stories about Anna, the Ice Queen they called her. Dmitri's opposite in temperament, but equal in skill. Where Dmitri had been fire and madness, Anna was frost and calculation. Where he had been erratic, she was methodical. And where he had been eventually defeated by his own mind, Anna remained terrifyingly sane. Elena grabbed the Kentucky rifle and stepped onto the porch. Behind her, she heard movement. Jesse appeared from the hotel, Cooper from his office, others emerging from their evening routines, sensing drama. The woman dismounted with fluid grace and walked her horse forward. She stopped 50 feet away, close enough to be heard, far enough to be safe. "Elena Volkov," the woman called. Her voice was accented Russian clear despite decades in America. "It has been a long time. Anna, I didn't know you were still alive." "I could say the same, but I always knew you survived. You were too stubborn to die quietly." Anna's gaze moved to Jesse, standing beside Elena. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "And this must be my nephew. Dmitri's son. The boy you abandoned." Jesse tensed. "Who are you?" "I am Anna Volkov, your father's sister, your blood." She took a step forward. "I have been looking for you for 20 years, ever since Elena murdered my brother and left you to die." "I left him at a church to save his life," Elena said. "You left him to be found by scavengers, by Wallace." Anna's voice was cold. "Do you know what Wallace did to him? How he raised him to hate you, to become a weapon?" "I do now." "And does that ease your conscience, knowing your cowardice destroyed him?" Jesse stepped forward, his voice hard. "She saved my life. Wallace would have killed me if she hadn't left me where someone else could find me." "Wallace was a monster, but he was not the only option." Anna's eyes never left Elena. "I searched for you both. I would have raised you, Jesse, given you a real family, taught you honor, not hatred, but I could not find you. And now I see what you have become, a killer, like your mother, like your father." "What do you want, Anna?" Elena asked. "Justice, for Dmitri, for Jesse, for 20 years of lies." Anna's hand moved to her gun. "I challenge you, formal duel. At dawn tomorrow, you and me, 1 shot each. Winner lives, loser dies, and Jesse comes with the winner." "I'm not a prize to be won," Jesse said. "You are Volkov blood. That makes you my responsibility." Anna's gaze softened slightly when she looked at him. "Your father was my only family. When Elena killed him, she took everything from me, just as she took you. I want both back." Elena felt the weight of history pressing down. 20 years. It always came back to 20 years. "And if I refuse, then I kill everyone in this town until you agree, starting with the boy." Anna's voice was matter-of-fact. "I am not Wallace. I do not enjoy killing. But I will do what is necessary." Cooper stepped forward, hand on his gun. "You threatening my town?" Anna finally looked at him. "I threaten nothing. I state facts. Elena created this situation. She will resolve it, or people will die." Her attention returned to Elena. "Dawn, the north field beyond the church. 1 rifle each, 1 shot. The way Volkovs have settled disputes for generations. And if I win, you leave Jesse alone. If you win, I honor the outcome. Volkovs keep their word." Anna mounted her horse. "If I win, I take Jesse and we disappear. He learns his real family, his real name, his real heritage." "I don't want that," Jesse said. "I want to stay here, figure out who I am. You are Volkov. That is who you are. The rest is illusion." Anna wheeled her horse. "Dawn, Elena, or everyone here dies. Choose." She rode into the gathering darkness, becoming a shadow, then gone. The council gathered in the trading post. Elena, Jesse, Cooper, Abigail, Marcus Sullivan, Reverend Holt, Lily Harrington. "You can't do this," Jesse said immediately. "She'll kill you." "Maybe," Elena said. "Not maybe, definitely." Cooper leaned against the counter. "I've heard of Anna Volkov. She's legendary, never misses, never hesitates. You might be good, Elena, but she's been training for 20 years while you were running a store." "I know." "Then why agree?" Abigail asked. "Because she's right. This is my fault, my responsibility." Elena looked at Jesse. "And because she's your family, real blood family. Maybe you should know them." "I don't want to know them. I want to know you." Jesse's voice cracked. "I just found my mother. I'm not losing her to some honor duel." "You won't lose me. I'll win." "You don't know that." Elena was silent because he was right. She didn't know. Couldn't know. Anna was everything Elena used to be, but sharper, colder, unsoftened by 20 years of peace. "There has to be another way," Holt said. "We could ambush her, Take her down before the duel. She'd expect that, and we'd lose people. Elena shook her head. This is the clean way. One life risked instead of many. Your life, Jesse said. My mother's life. The word hung in the air. Mother. The first time Jesse had said it. Elena felt something crack inside her. Not break, crack. Like ice beginning to thaw. I have to do this, Elena said quietly. For you, for me, for everyone in this town. Anna won't stop unless I face her. You know that. Jesse looked away, his jaw tight. But he nodded. Elena spent the night preparing, not her weapons. The Kentucky rifle was clean oiled ready. It had always been ready. But herself, her mind, her spirit. She sat in meditation, breathing deeply, remembering her father's training. A Volkov never misses. You are a Volkov. You will never miss. But she had missed. In 20 years of peace, she had deliberately missed. Target practice where she aimed to the side. Hunting where she took shots she knew would fail. She had spent 2 decades unlearning the very thing that had defined her. Could she remember? Could she become Deadeye Volkov again for one morning? One shot. She didn't know. A knock at the door. She expected Jesse. But it was Abigail who entered, carrying her medical bag and something else. A bottle. Whiskey, Abigail said, setting it on the table. For after. Whether you need to celebrate or cope. Optimistic of you to assume I'll be alive to drink it. I'm a doctor. Optimism is required. Abigail sat. I need to tell you something. In case tomorrow doesn't go well. You already confessed everything. Not everything. Abigail took a breath. When David died, I wanted to die too. For years I thought about it. Different ways. Different times. But I never did. Because somewhere buried deep, I knew revenge wouldn't bring him back. That becoming a killer to punish a killer just made more death. But you tried anyway. I tried. And I'm grateful I failed. Abigail leaned forward. If you die tomorrow, Elena, know that you changed me, made me better than I was. That's worth something. Everything's worth something, but not everything is worth dying for. What about Jesse? Is he worth dying for? Elena looked at the window, where the first hint of dawn was beginning to gray the darkness. Yes, he's worth it, even if he hates me, even if I never see him grow old. Yes. Dawn came too quickly and too slowly. Elena walked to the north field alone. She had forbidden Jesse from coming, forbidden Cooper from interfering. This was between her and Anna, between past and present, between the woman she was and the woman she had tried to become. The field was empty except for Anna. She stood at the opposite end, rifle in hand, waiting. She had dressed formally. Black coat, black pants, black boots, like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Elena approached to the midpoint. They stood 50 yards apart, the traditional distance. Close enough to be lethal, far enough to be honorable. Reverend Holt was there despite Elena's wishes. He stood to the side, Bible in hand. I'll officiate. Make sure the rules are followed. You know the rules, Anna asked. I was there when Volkovs dueled before, when Jacob Morse ran with your brother's gang. Holt's voice was steady. I know the ritual. Anna nodded. Then begin. Holt stepped forward. Each combatant will load one shot. On my signal you will turn and fire. First to draw blood wins. First to kill wins. If both miss you reload and go again. Understood? Understood, Elena said. Understood, Anna echoed. They loaded their rifles. Elena's hands were steady. All the fear, all the doubt, all the humanity she had built over 20 years fell away. She became something else, something older, something that had never forgotten how to kill. Deadeye Volkov had come home. Turn and walk, Holt commanded. They turned, began walking. 10 steps. 20. Elena counted them in her head, breathed, let the world narrow to sensation and mathematics. Turn. Elena spun. Rifle coming up. Sight picture acquiring. Anna was already turning, her movement smooth, practiced. Their rifles rose as one. 2 women, 2 guns. One moment. Time slowed. Elena saw everything. The wind moving through Anna's hair, the perfect stillness of her trigger finger, the absolute confidence in her eye. This was a woman who had never missed, who would never miss. Elena aimed for the heart, center, mass, the kill shot. And then in the half-second before firing, she saw Jesse, standing at the edge of the field despite her orders, his face twisted with anguish, watching his mother and his aunt try to kill each other, watching his family destroy itself again. Elena adjusted her aim, moved the barrel 3 inches right. A wound instead of a kill. Maybe. They fired simultaneously, 2 shots, 1 breath. The world exploded in sound and smoke and consequence. Elena felt the impact before she heard it. Anna's bullet took her in the left shoulder, spinning her sideways. She fell, hit the ground hard. The Kentucky rifle tumbled from her hands. Through the pain, through the shock, she saw Anna, saw her stagger, saw the blood spreading across her right side. Not a kill shot, but not a miss either. They had both hit. Both survived. Holt ran to Elena first, checked the wound. Clean through. Missed the bone. Abigail was there, appearing from nowhere, her medical bag open. Hold still. This is going to hurt. Elena barely heard her. Her eyes were on Anna. The other woman had dropped to one knee, hand pressed against her side. Blood seeped between her fingers, but she was alive, conscious, and she was smiling. You missed, Anna called. Her voice was strained but clear. You aimed for my heart and hit my side. You missed, Elena. I didn't miss. I aimed exactly where I wanted. Anna's smile widened. Then you are not the dead eye anymore. You have become soft, weak, human. Yes. And yet you are alive. And so am I. Anna stood slowly, painfully. That was not supposed to happen. One of us was supposed to die. Plans change. Anna walked forward, each step an obvious effort. She stopped 10 feet away. Why spare me? I came to kill you. Because Jesse is watching. Because he's lost too much family already. Because maybe there's been enough killing. Elena struggled to sit up, Abigail supporting her. And because you're right. I'm not Dead-Eye Volkov anymore. That woman would have killed you without hesitation. Then who are you? Someone trying to be better than I was. Not always succeeding, but trying. Elena looked at Jesse, then back at Anna. You're his family, real blood. Maybe he needs that, needs to know where he comes from. Anna followed her gaze to Jesse. Her expression softened in ways Elena wouldn't have thought possible. He looks like Dmitri before the madness took him. He has his father's eyes and his stubbornness. Volkov traits. Anna was quiet for a moment. Then, I came here to kill you and take Jesse. I failed at the first, and I realize I cannot do the second. Not if he does not wish it. He wishes to stay here, to figure out who he is without Wallace or me or you telling him. Then he should stay. Anna's voice was soft. But I want to know him, to tell him about his father, about our family. The good parts before everything went dark. That's his choice. They turned to Jesse. The young man stood frozen, torn between two worlds. Then slowly he walked to them. He knelt between Elena and Anna, looking at both women. I want to know my family, Jesse said. All of it. The truth. Not Wallace's lies. Not comfortable stories. The truth. Who my father was. Who my mother is. Who my aunt is. He looked at Anna. Can you give me that? Yes, Anna said. But I cannot stay here. I am wanted in 6 territories. Staying would bring danger. Then visit, when it's safe. Tell me stories. Teach me about the Volkovs. Jesse turned to Elena. And you teach me how to be better than them. How to take that legacy and transform it into something that doesn't end in blood. Elena felt tears on her face. I can try, no promises. Trying is enough. 6 months later. Spring had come to Blackwater Creek. The snow had melted, revealing earth ready for planting. The town had grown. New families had arrived, drawn by stories of a place where people could start over, where past sins were buried and future possibilities were nurtured. Elena stood on the porch of the trading post, leaning on a cane. The bullet wound had healed, but it had left her weaker. Her left arm didn't work quite right anymore. Fine motor control was difficult. Holding the Kentucky rifle for extended periods was impossible. She had hung the rifle above the door one last time, not as a weapon, as a memory, as a reminder of who she had been and who she had chosen to become. Jesse worked in the shop beside her, having taken over much of the heavy lifting. He was learning the business, learning to interact with customers, learning to be part of a community. He still struggled, still had nightmares about Wallace, still questioned everything, but he was trying. And trying was enough. Anna had visited twice. Once in winter bringing stories and old photographs, once in early spring bringing nothing but herself. She stayed a week each time, teaching Jesse Russian, telling him about his grandparents, his heritage, the parts that didn't involve killing. The relationship was strained, complicated, but it was real, and it was theirs. Abigail had stayed. She and Elena had formed something that wasn't quite friendship, but was more than alliance. They played chess on Thursday evenings, drank tea, talked about their brothers, their ghosts, their attempts at redemption. Neither had forgiven herself, but they had forgiven each other, and that was something. Cooper had announced his retirement. He would step down as sheriff at the end of summer. He recommended Jesse as his replacement. The town council was considering it. A young man with a complicated past learning to be better. It seemed fitting for Blackwater Creek. Now, as Elena watched the spring rain begin to fall, she thought about the journey, from Elena Volkov to Catherine Brennan to something in between, from killer to shopkeeper to mother, from running to standing, from hiding to being seen. It wasn't redemption. Redemption was too clean, too final, too much like absolution. This was something messier, more complicated, more human. This was survival with honor, living with consequences, building something new from the broken pieces of what was. Jesse joined her on the porch watching the rain. Anna sent a letter. She's coming in the summer, wants to teach me to shoot properly. Elena smiled. You already know how to shoot. She says I know how Wallace taught. She wants to teach me the Volkov way, says there's a difference. There is. Wallace taught killing. Volkovs teach precision. There's philosophy to it, ritual. It's not just about death. It's about control, discipline, honor in its own twisted way. Will you teach me to? Show me how you did it. Elena looked at her hands, at the scar on her face, at the cane she now needed. I don't know if I can anymore. The wound changed me, made me slower, less certain. Good. I don't want to be fast. I want to be careful, thoughtful. I want to be someone who chooses not to shoot more often than someone who does. Jesse paused. Will you try with me? Elena felt something warm in her chest. Something that felt like hope, if hope could be cautious and scarred and still beautiful. Yes, I'll try. They stood together, mother and son, watching the rain wash Blackwater Creek clean. Behind them, the Kentucky rifle hung silent above the door, a ghost made wood and steel and memory. The rifle that never missed, except when it mattered most. When missing was the bravest thing you could do, but the story doesn't quite end there. Because 2 weeks later, a letter arrived for Elena. No return address, postmarked from San Francisco. Inside was a single piece of paper with 4 words, "Your daughter is alive." Beneath it a photograph. A young woman, 20 years old, dark hair, Elena's eyes. A scar on her hand that Elena remembered putting there accidentally when the girl was 5. Before the fever, before the death. Before Emily was buried in the churchyard in a coffin Elena had never opened because she couldn't bear to look. Emily, who had never died at all. Emily, who had been taken, hidden, raised by someone else while Elena mourned a ghost. Elena's hands shook as she held the photograph. Behind her, Jesse was reading over her shoulder. What does this mean? It means, Elena said slowly, her voice hollow with shock and rage and desperate hope, that the past isn't finished with me yet. She turned to look at the mountains, at the vast territory beyond Blackwater Creek. Somewhere out there was her daughter, alive, real, waiting to be found. And Elena Volkov Deadeye, the woman who never missed, would find her, even if it meant becoming the monster she had spent 20 years trying to bury. Some debts could only be paid in blood, and some reunions were worth any cost. The end.